Well, welcome everybody. Stephen Boswell here with Matt Oechsli, here to talk about your volatility action plan. If you don't come into this call already having a volatility action plan, you're going to leave one here today.
Yeah, hopefully so.
So we get to thinking about this. Hopefully we've all learned some lessons since the 2008, 2009 crisis. From an advisory perspective, what should we be doing to bring in business? What should we be doing to soothe our clients? And how should we be reacting mentally? And we saw some real how-tos last go-around, and we saw some real struggles last go-around. And this time we're seeing some of the same effects. Just this past week, I get on a coaching call with an advisor, and I ask him, how are you doing?
This is classic. This
story is
classic.
First words out of his mouth were, Stephen, I'm on the ledge outside my office. Talk me down. And he was half kidding, but still, it proves a point as to some people's mentality right now with this volatility.
You would think we would learn, but we're such a species of habit. And if our habit is to overreact, if our habit is to panic, and, it's so interesting. So, we do our focus groups on the affluent, and you know this, Stephen, they have a primary advisor, they're satisfied with their advisor, and then we ask them, if there's one area your advisor could do better on, could improve, it's always the same. Communication, communication, communication. And they're not talking about communication and volatility, they're just talking about communication in general. So this is all about communication, and first and foremost, as an advisor, you can't be on the ledge yourself. You have to put this in historical context. We came out of 2008, 2009. This too will pass.
You bet. And we're thinking about some of the folks that we knew that did really well in that crisis last time with client retention, client acquisition, and you study them and you realize they were proactive, they were working harder than ever, but they were having some fun doing it because it was working. They were bringing in business.
Absolutely. And then the ones who are still trying to recover, these are the advisors who panicked themselves. They were selling out to cash and doing it's, and, hopefully, this volatility action plan, not only do advisors need it, but if they're already enacting one, this can help them just maybe fine tune and broaden it a little bit because, golly, they're financial advisors. It's not just being a financial advisor in fair weather sailing.
Right. And, it's time for everybody we got to make sure our head's in the game. If there's ever a time to put in more hours, to be more focused, to be more proactive, now is it.
Oh, you bet. It's the summer, dog days of summer. We're going into Labor Day weekend, but, and so as this slide, the proactive, idea really has a number of components. First, an advisor needs to craft their story, and you have your own analysts at your firm, you need to be on top of this. You can, follow people you follow who are really on top of this, or your own knowledge, your own opinion, but you have to have a story. What's going on and why, and how it fits into what you're dealing with the clients, your clients, your attitude with this.
You bet. And thinking about it, you're getting so much information right now, Matt, from every newspaper. It's the major headlines. Every expert everywhere is talking to you about it. You've got your own suspicions about what's happening. How do you boil all that down to a handful of bullet points that you can say succinctly, whether you're talking with clients, prospects, or COIs, and get your message across without fanning the flames of what's happening? And for many of you out there, it might take, let's put some of these bullet points down on paper, even though you might not think it's necessary, but then, only then, can we really trim it down to something that's a soundbite of your own?
And always, advisors should always remember, the affluent do not trust the media. They understand all that. They fan the flames of fear and craziness. And so by the same token, the affluent really are looking for that advisor, their trusted advisor, to be their sort of emotional rock, their sort of beacon of light through this.
You bet. So first, we craft that message. Then we define that audience, and we go beyond our current clients, even though absolutely you're making sure clients are well taken care of. There's a real prospecting opportunity.
This is the best time for acquisition right now. And we'll get into that. But see, the message is crafted for clients, it's for prospects, and for your referral alliance partners, these centers of influence.
And we want to broaden our thinking about this. Clients are fairly straightforward, but when you think about prospects, think not only of those who are hot in your pipeline right now, because obviously we want to be reaching out to them personally and say, Matt, it's a volatile couple of weeks here. I just want to make sure you and I are in close communication because I know you've got a lot going on financially, something along those lines.
Right.
But I want to
right.
be thinking back to people who might have been in my pipeline 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And we've even had examples of elite advisors being called by people they've just socialized with one or two times. They're just beginning that romance phase. And here are these affluent prospects calling the advisor, asking, what should we be doing? What do you think? I mean, it's just a brilliant time.
You bet. And thinking about COIs, the message for them is a little bit different. You certainly want to make sure they're well taken care of personally, but at the same time, you want to offer them a few sound bites because your story to them is, hey, Matt, I know you as a good accountant here in the area. You're getting questions from people who are concerned, who want to make sure their tax structure is in order for this type of volatility. If it helps, I want to share with you a couple of bullet points that I've been sharing with people just to help them stay sane in this kind of craziness.
Exactly. If you help a referral alliance partner, a CPA, an attorney, whomever, craft their story, deal with their clients and spheres of influence. Right. And then you just go one step further. And if you have anybody who's really needs to be talked off the ledge, just don't hesitate to have them call us. We'll see if we can help them get off that ledge.
Yeah, exactly right. And one more point, thinking about a related topic, Matt, when you're thinking about current clients, think about client family members as well. Now's a perfect time to let the Matts of the world know, Matt, hey, I know some of your children are getting older, and this might be the first time they've seen a crisis like this with their own money. It might be a good time for us to have a meeting with them.
That's a great point, Stephen. I mean, a great point. And this whole millennial next-gen craze, which is obviously it's the biggest economic factor going forward, but only 20% of millennials are using the financial advisor that their parents use, and only 21% of advisors have even indicated any interest in working.
Right.
I mean,
interest.
Yeah. So it's perfect time. Great point.
And lastly, how do we deliver this message? This is the tactical part of what we're going to talk about today, and we want to make sure this isn't just accepting client calls.
Right.
And,
right.
How interesting was this, Matt? You remember back when we launched that survey back in late 2008, heart of the crisis. I mean, this was the worst week, banks shutting down, that sort of thing. And we said, we can't pass this up. We've got to put out some research right now and get a finger on the pulse of the industry. And one of the stats that came back that just blew our minds was the fact that only 13.4% of advisors had increased the face time they were spending with clients.
It was unreal.
13.4%.
It was unreal. It's like they were in a fetal position under their desk. And by the way, the clients never forget this. They don't forget when they were abandoned in crisis. Now, this volatility right now is not a crisis. And advisors really need to understand this. Everybody talks about corrections, and that's part of the story. But you're absolutely right.
And when we're thinking about it, whether it's one-on-one, phone calls, dinners, lunches, small group workshops, there's so many options.
Little lunch and learn. It could be a webinar. You could have some analysts from your firm that on a webinar with your clients. There's many communication mediums that can be done, but face to face, obviously, with your top tier clients,
you bet,
is obviously it's number one.
Yeah, let's dig through this a little bit. All the elements you just saw on that previous slide about getting proactive, we're going to dive into these, and you'll get a recording of what we're talking about here today. So if you don't have your assistant or your team on the line for this, or if you're a manager and you don't have your FAs on the line for this, use the playback, get the message out there. We need everybody out there pulling in the same direction.
And well said, Stephen, because everybody on your team needs to be on your story. Everybody on the team needs to be able to sort of give that emotional positive energy to clients when they're talking to clients.
Yeah. And as we were prepping for this webinar yesterday, Matt, you and I were talking about what are some of the key elements in crafting that story.
Well, you have to have an opinion on what's going on. And by the way, in crafting your story, this is not about you just going out and having verbal diarrhea and you're the know-it-all. I mean, it's the opposite. Listen, you got to listen to your clients. That's the first thing. Feel their fear, empathize with their concerns and their panic, as irrational as it might be, and then you fit in your story about what you see is going on and what you're doing and how their situation is going to be and how they're going to come through all of this.
Yeah, exactly right. And And in any way that you can, you're acknowledging the fact that there's some things happening globally and in our markets, but you're also getting down to a client level to say what you're doing specifically with clients right now.
Right.
And we asked the question number 4 there, what's your energy level like? Because clients can read it all over you, even through the phone. If Matt's a little panicked, if
Right.
Matt's a little stressed, I can tell it.
Right. We're all energy forms, and if your energy is bad, I mean, it's just not conducive to helping your clients. You're not going to be magnetically pulling in prospects. You're not going to be taking advantage. There's a silver lining in what's going on right now, but your energy has to be strong to capitalize on it.
Absolutely. Not only that, but to rally your support of your team.
No question.
Well, let's talk about defining the right audience. This might seem straightforward, but we want to broaden everybody's thinking around who exactly you're reaching out to.
Right. Right. I mean, look at your current clients. This sounds obvious, but the first question is, have you been in direct communication, whether it's, face-to-face is the number one preferred medium for all affluent clients, whether they're millennials or seniors. It doesn't matter. And telephone's the second. So face-to-face, telephone, personal conversation with every client. Then family members of clients. As you said before, it's a perfect time to segue into millennial conversations, and then spheres of influence of those clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you start thinking about prospects, again, current prospects, past prospects, and Matt, as you were talking about yesterday with us, anybody that you know.
Right.
I mean, people that think back in the last few years of anybody at your club, on the soccer sidelines, anywhere in your life that have said, hey, Matt, what's going on with the markets, or how's business?
Right. You're exactly right. It's an opportunity, and you have your story. It's geared slightly to the prospect, but if they have any questions or they need any a look-see guidance, you're there for them.
Right. So if you're at your club and you see somebody who would ask you that kind of question, I'd say, Matt, hey, it just struck me the other day. You had that question about X and Y and Z stock a while back, and I mean, this is such a crazy time out there. Would it help for us to sit down with you and just discuss some of that as it relates to today?
Right.
Yeah.
Or how are you handling the volatility? Everything going all right?
Right.
I mean, just a simple question like, you're sort of throwing that dart, but you're doing it in a very, very sort of helpful, you're the good doctor.
Right. Absolutely.
And we know this is happening because, as I said earlier, many of these elite advisors are getting calls from these people who they know who aren't clients, asking for help, asking for advice, asking for their thoughts, asking for their story.
You bet. That's the way it should work. And thinking about COIs, we talked about this previously, making sure they have a story to tell, making sure they know that you're being proactive and spending time with your clients and seeing you as a resource.
Yeah, a resource for anybody who really they think needs, your guidance. It's beyond their expertise.
You bet. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the tactics here, Matt. And with everything that we ever recommend around relationship management or with marketing, Matt, I know you've talked about this for a long time. Structure, structure, structure.
Right.
When, how many,
right.
This isn't, let's do some dinners.
Right. I mean, so, you think about how many lunches, how many dinners can you have per week with your top tier clients, and I would also include in there a CPA alliance, attorney who you might have a good relationship with. I mean, you're getting your message across, your story across, your energy is right there. I mean, but you have to put structure.
You bet. Twice a week, once a week, whatever can fit into your model here.
Right.
There's some options, but once or twice a week. And we threw out the hint, where should you go? Where the power players are going.
Right.
You want to put yourself in traffic.
It's interesting. You heard the news. Just last night I was listening to the news and they said, well, the markets weren't quite as volatile, so many of the traders are on vacation. I mean, this is the time. We know it's vacation time, but.
Right. It's a sign. Well, outbound client calls, fairly straightforward. Many of you have been making these already, but let's put structure behind this. How many calls are we making a day? To what extent can our team contribute?
Yeah, the fact that your assistant can make these calls. I mean, as we know, the demise of the sales assistant really is now the birth of the relationship manager, and your relationship manager on the team, they should be making these calls also. I mean, how are you, Sandy? How are things? Everything. Just want to let you know, we're on top of this. And again, telling the story.
Exactly right. And market-related events, Matt. This was one of the trends we saw last go around with this crisis of the elite advisors gave their clients ample opportunity to get some education around what's happening. Not speculation, not
Right.
CNN,
Right.
not Jim Cramer,
Right.
education on it.
Right. And this is, the number one event that an affluent client will attend is a fun social event. But the number two is something very real, relative to them. And this volatility, is a perfect opportunity for these market updates. You can invite your COIs. You can invite clients of COIs to these updates. You can record these little events and post them, which we'll get to in video conferencing and social media. I mean,
but these were, it's no different than when we talk about fun events. We say pick a topic that's hot. If there's a new restaurant in town or a new brewery, pick it because people will come. Right now, the topic of the market volatility is hot.
Right.
And we're thinking about how can we do this informally and regularly? Because we had people last go around with the crisis, they'd host a breakfast. In their conference room, the only expense would be orange juice, coffee, and donuts or something.
And I remember this is one of these elite advisors. Host a breakfast, then another breakfast, then another breakfast, then host a lunch, then another lunch. Now, this advisor didn't eat 3 breakfasts and 2 lunches, but it's just to show, it was demonstration of face-to-face, this is an opportunity, we're not letting it pass. And now, one thing the advisor didn't do, and back then it wasn't quite as much of a digital world, but that could have been recorded, could have been filmed, could have been posted.
You bet. And, depending on what firm you're at, more and more of you are able to do some video conferencing. Many of you right now can see Matt and I live, and we think it adds a nice new element. Hopefully you like our new studio here. But, we think it adds another element to the conversation. As with many of you, even in smaller groups than what we have here today, it betters if you've got a client who's remote or doesn't want to come into the office, host a video conference with you and perhaps somebody from your firm's research department that can help you tell the story.
Oh, yeah. And most firms really have a lot of assistance in this, but it's up to the advisor to pick and choose what type of assistance they want. And if you do any type of video conferencing, it's highly recommended. I mean, videos are the future. The future's really now. From video blogs on A, B, and C. I mean, this is something that, the technology is just, it's there for you.
Right. And it's one that, you might think that many of your clients might not be into this. They might not be able to access it. They will surprise you.
Right. They'll surprise you.
It's easier now than it's ever been.
And, obviously stay within your compliance swim lane, with this. But, you take advantage of the experts at your firm. I mean, involve other professionals who can help you deliver that message. It's just, again, it's an opportunity and it's a communication medium.
Sure. And you have an easier time getting the brass out from your firm or from one of the fund companies than you do over the web than you do in person because they're busy.
Absolutely. Yes. No question.
And social media, Matt.
Oh, gosh. This is brilliant. We were sitting down. We had Kevin Nichols in the meeting yesterday and as he said, post content. If you, and I know advisors are always worried about compliance, and they should be, by the way, but every firm has content. Go through the content your firm has and post that content relative, obviously to the volatility of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And you're thinking about any channel that you're in, Facebook for Business, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, if you have the ability to post some videos are huge, a blog that you're writing. So, yeah, like you mentioned, Matt, phase 1, post, but phase 2 is equally important. How are you listening?
Right.
Who's posting right now?
Right. Listen to what's being posted, and if it makes sense, then like it and pass it on.
And it doesn't have to be, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying looking out on LinkedIn or on Twitter for somebody saying, in need of a financial advisor today, help. We've seen big brands do that on Twitter, searching for people posting things like that. But what I mean to say is that when you're listening, you want any kind of interaction. So if I'm listening and I'm on LinkedIn and it says Matt's having a birthday, I might call Matt, even though, I might not know him that well.
Right.
Or Matt has a work anniversary. I might say congratulations because contact counts right now in this volatility.
And it's also, there's a lot of content out there that you can curate. In other words, you see whether it's CNN or something from an economist that's out there that you're being active, and you see it there, and this is part of my message. This is good for my clients and prospects and spheres of influence out there in digital world to see.
Right.
And then you just pass it on.
Matt, it just sparked in my brain here. I've heard you talk before about what's always playing in advisors' offices on the TV.
Right.
I mean, now if there's ever a time to cut off the CNN, the talk news, right, now is the time.
Now is the time. And you just basically, advisors want to take control of this. Focus on what you can control. You can control your emotions. You can control, whether you're interacting with clients, prospects, centers of influence. You can control your story, and you can control the structure of this, basically volatility action plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And the takeaway from all this is not to overcomplicate it and come up with a robust plan that it takes you a week to complete. We wanted you keeping it simple.
Right. And just remember that the silver lining here, if you commit yourself to this action plan with clients, prospects, and centers of influence, advisors will be bringing in business. This is the time to grow.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, gang, we've got time for a few questions today. Matt, you ready for some questions?
Sure.
If you would like to ask a question, feel free to type it in. Some of you have started doing that already. And if you'd like to raise your hand so that we can call on you using the audio, we love that as well. So fire away. We've got the expert, Mr. Matt Oechsli, here, and happy to field some questions for you. So, well, Matt, first question here. If you're doing market update events, how many is an ideal number to host every month?
A market update event, like I said before, here's this elite advisor back in 2009 having 3 breakfasts and 2 lunches with clients, guests of clients, and spheres of influence. So at this juncture, you can't do too many, but you really want to be touching all of your clients, your prospects, and your centers of influence. You don't need to have 5 market updates for the same clients.
Right.
They should be intimate in nature, where you can interact and field questions, obviously, from your clients and prospects.
Yeah, exactly right. Less is more in that one for sure. Well, another question coming out, could you give an example of a story that you would use? And I'll start with that one, Matt. Part of it depends on what's happening that's relevant and topical. And even though we're saying turn off CNN and turn off Fox News, we want everybody staying current on what's happening.
Right.
Never should you be unprepared there. So reference a couple things situationally, what's going on in China or Europe or here with the election cycle. Just a couple of things to let everybody know that you're current and you're paying attention to it.
And then link that to the financial plan that you've created for your clients, how you have them allocated, where they stand, what historically happened with them, following that plan from 08, 09 in the crisis.
Yes, Matt, absolutely. Just linking it to the fact that it's long-term in nature with your clients, and you're trying to keep everybody focused here.
Linking it to a historical perspective, reminding them of the people who really got hurt back in the last crisis when they went to cash too early, and they just...
There are a lot of people that were hypersensitive back then, and they lost big.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the drumbeat that we'd use. Yeah, they want us to back up, Matt, to the slide that shows the talking points that you'd use to craft your personal story. Sure thing. And we'll also send this out, everybody, as a follow-up to this webinar here. You'll get a live recording of it so you can look at it that way as well.
And the story should be, it really puts it in a context for you so you can tell your story and every member of your team can tell the story. And it's not like you're becoming a know-it-all, but you're taking the panic and fear. And this is our critical path. This is why we've done what we've done. As you said, Stephen, we're on top of these current events that are out there. We follow the economists, not just at our firm, but in general.
And in these cases, how you say it is more important than what you're saying.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. We could give you the perfect script. And if you relay it, you're slunk down and you just look like your eyes are bugging out of your head and you're saying, Matt, we've got a recovery plan and we're working on planning. Come on, you can say anything you want. Hey, if we could get a couple of things through those knuckleheads in China's head over there, whatever.
Well,
without being flippant about it, but if you've got good energy.
and we say this all the time, but this industry really, is only designed for A players. You got to be an A player in this industry. Anybody can be, a B player when the markets are going up and everything's honky-dory. But to be a full-fledged financial advisor overseeing the multiplicity of their clients' financial affairs in volatile times, you got to be an A player. Whether you're on the support side of the team, whether you're the planner, whether you're the relationship manager, or whether you're the lead dog, that senior advisor on the team.
You bet. And it was much like, I remember us giving the analogy a few years ago that if there was a major medical outbreak and everybody was getting the swine flu, you'd sure want a physician who was calling you and saying, Matt, hey, I know that's been going around. I want to give you a few tips on protecting you and your family.
Yeah, or just say, I want to make sure everybody in your family's had a flu shot.
Right.
I mean, it's just simple as that. It's not. Right. It's not complicated.
You don't want the doctor who's reading every medical journal and hunkered down by the TV.
Or the doctor who's on vacation. The doctor who's on a safari.
Yeah, exactly. Not saying all of you hang out for Labor Day. Everybody needs a break. But before you take off, you've got some time to pound out some calls and arrange some meetings for when you get back.
Exactly.
Well, Matt, I've enjoyed it. And
I've enjoyed it also. And again, this is where the cream rises to the top. This separates the average advisor from the elite advisor. Go for this. Go for it strong. There's a silver lining here. We recognize it's work. Everybody would love a nice sunny day every day, but storms do arise. And so it's how we handle the storm, and handle it well, and you won't look back.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.